the art of three. You would have three jokes that you wanted to put in the show. One was not very funny. One was really, really racy, wasn't going to get on the air. And the other one was the one you wanted. And so when the BS&P people would say, we can't do, joke number 2 is just outrageous, but we want joke number 2. It's really funny, but it's really outrageous. You can't do it. Fine, well, let's go with joke number 1. Well, that one's not really funny. All right, then let's use 3. Okay. Then that's how we did it all the time. But guns, One Piece when we were doing it, crucifixes, guys hanging out on crucifixes in a bunch of episodes. That's really not going to fly in America. All right? So that's what that stuff is all about. Just so that we're on record and understanding that, you know, how come you guys did this? We didn't do that. We would be like, can we do this? No. How about this? Yes. And it varied, because we were doing both Foxbox and WB at the same time. And the people that worked at those 2 different networks had different ranges of what they allowed and what they didn't, based on personal preference. Some were offended by something, some were not. So that's where that stuff comes from. So there was never an English dub, because when they saw the original footage, they pulled it from the series, from that year's series, that batch, and said, you got to replace that episode with a different episode. So that's a good question. Yeah. In the hat, yes.
If you were to date either Officer Jenny or Nurse Joy,
It only made it to question 2 with that one. It's like, how long is it going to take? Now, are you asking as Brock or as Eric? As, oh, well, you got to make up your mind. I'm only going to give you one.
as you.
Okay, so I like the fact that Nurse Joy could take care of me if I were sick and things like that, but I love a woman in uniform. I would totally date Officer Jenny. That's just my thing. I think Officer Jenny is more attractive, and she's tough, and that's kind of cool. I like a tough woman. So there, good question. Yeah.
Good. My camera's literally going to die. So, to make this quick, one, I'd like to correct something I told you this morning. When I said Anime America, I didn't like your Kaiba voice, which is a damn fools. You have an excellent Kaiba voice.
I would hope so. I am Kaiba.
What I didn't tell you was I liked your other work. Also, by the way, you ever heard of a show called Sword Art Online? I find it quite weird that one of the main antagonists from the first season was also called Kaiba, or something similar to that, and he liked dragons. I think that was very weird.
See, here's my theory on anime. Did I work on that show?
No, you didn't. You wouldn't.
Then I don't care. Honest answer, right? All right, who's got another question? Yes.
I know that as Setsun Kaiba, he's like a really kind of mean and pompous character. Was there ever any time when you were like, oh, this guy's a jerk, or like it was hard for you to get into character?
No, actually, someone asked me about Kaiba today. Came up to the table and was talking about how they really liked Kaiba and said, we were talking about what category you'd put him under in terms of antagonist, villain, arch rival. And the way I approached Kaiba is actually Rocky and Apollo Creed. Seriously, because if you follow the whole story, you find out in the Egyptian story arc that Kaiba is actually Yugi's lieutenant, his sparring partner. So I approached him as, you can't be the champ if there's no one that pushes you to be that champ. So if there was no one to make Yugi keep training and being the best he could be, he would sit around and watch Judge Judy. So when you if you only had the show taking place in an ancient Egyptian storyline, it would be very clear. I was his sparring partner. I would push him, right? But how do you do that in modern day without sort of giving it away completely? So the sarcastic rival is not his enemy. I push him, I drive him crazy, I keep him trying to be better. So I don't really think Kaiba is a jerk, is a villain. He's an arch rival, but there's more to him, because he's not a villain. So the sarcasm and stuff like that, yeah, he could be mean, but there's a purpose behind it. And once we learn what that purpose is, of course, we knew that as the producers of the show. I directed Yu-Gi-Oh! First of all for the first 2 seasons, so we knew that. But as the actor, I was trying to walk that line of, do you like me? Do you not like me? Am I honoring this role that's going to be revealed. So that's how I approach that. So, but good question. Yeah.
What do you think the bands have influenced you the most?
Bands that influenced me the most. It starts way back. Buddy Holly is probably my hero. I'm a big Elvis fan. And then as we got a little older, Springsteen is a big influence of mine. When I really wanted to rock, I loved AC/DC. I still love AC/DC. I listen to a lot of different music, but I'm a big lyricist. I'm all about the words. So guys like Cat Stevens, things like that, more folk rock, stuff like that. Yeah, I'm a classic rock guy. And for those of you who don't know me beyond the voiceover work, I toured with Ringo Starr and the All-Star Band, and Peter Frampton and Leonard Skinner, and Chicago and Jethro Tull. So I played with a lot of rock and roll guys. So yeah, but I appreciate that question. Yeah, I would say that the top three are Buddy Holly, Cat Stevens, and Bruce Springsteen. That's probably right. His favorite quote of who? Of Brock. Everybody knows what my favorite quote is of Brock. Let's all do it together, shall we? I'll just use my trusty
Drawing pen!
as a drawing pen. Thank you. It's pure Shakespeare. Fantastic. That's a great example of a line that obviously was drawn in the Japanese, and the joke meant nothing in English. We're like, why is he doing that? It obviously didn't say that in the original Japanese, but they thought it was just so brilliant to do that. So there's an example of making it work. In the back.
What is one of your favorite voice roles to do? Or what was one of your favorite voice roles?
My favorite voices to do? I really like doing Meta Knight. I loved being able to, Meta Knight has no lip flap, right? So when we're doing dubbing, you gotta match lip flap and also act. So it's 50% technical, 50% acting. I also directed Viva Pinata, and I did that as a prelay show where you record the voices first, then assemble it like they would do the original Pokemon in Japanese. But with Meta Knight, what's great is, as long as I fit within the time frame of when the line started and ended, I could say it any way I wanted. So I could take my time and say things like this, and not worry about flap. And that was great. So, and actually it was kind of cool because when I was auditioning for that, they said, all right, we want Meta Knight to be kind of Clint Eastwood, kind of cool. And I was like, well, that's what I do with Kaiba. I can't do that. And they're like, yeah, that's true. And I said, well, what if I do Antonio Banderas? And this is before Shrek, before Puss in Boots, right? And I said, what if I do Antonio Banderas? And they said, well, why is Meta Knight Spanish? And I said, why isn't Meta Knight Spanish? And they were like, good point. And so, I played Antonio Banderas, and then of course Antonio Banderas played me playing Antonio Banderas when he played Puss in Boots. And I was like, what are you doing? You're stealing me, but stealing you. And then recently I did a convention down in Miami. And it was really kind of cool because I'm sitting at my table and about 10 young men come up to me and say, you were the voice of Meta Knight? I was like, yeah. They're like, I just want to thank you because you were the only character on Saturday mornings that sounded like we did, because they're all Spanish-speaking kids, that wasn't a joke. And that was cool. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It's like everything is a stereotype that we do, and you forget. It's like we all want to connect to a character. And we don't always have to make fun of a character to play a character. And I played Meta Knight very cool. He's probably the coolest I do. It's sexy, I mean, if I called you on the phone like that, whatever your preferences are, you date me. Right? You know what I'm saying, right? So anyway, but I thought that was really kind of cool that they were like, thank you for representing us in a cool voice. So there you go. Yeah.
Last time we saw you, you described the difference between your two children's reactions to
Yes.
the rap. I wonder if you could tell that story.
Okay, so I've got two daughters. Okay, 11 and 16, and my little one loves me doing voices in public. But I have a rule that if I do it, I have to keep it consistently throughout the entire experience because I don't want to let the waiter or the person in the grocery store think that I'm making fun of them. So for the whole evening, I might have to do Pecky Pudgeon like this, and let me get a chicken cutlet and a whole thing like that, which drives everyone else in the family crazy. She thinks it's hilarious. She's like, do Pecky again. I'm like, okay, I'll do this sort of Cheerios. It's 2 for 1, I get the thing. And they're like, I live in Tennessee now, where people are like, what is that guy saying? But then the older one, I have an entire room full of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon swag, right? I've got like all sorts of toys and posters, and it's crazy. It's like Toys R Us in my house, right? So my older daughter will have a friend come by, and the friend will say, she'll show her the house, come down and look at my studio or whatever, and go, why does your dad have all this Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff all over his office? And this is my older daughter's reaction. Oh, he does the voices for the show. Come on, let's go listen to music in my room. That's it. She plays it off. That's the whole thing. And then of course later on she's like, oh, my friend so-and-so thinks you're like the coolest guy in the world. Anyway. Yeah, so there it is. That's the dynamic in my house. But it's all right. As long as they still like me. Whether they like my work or not. All right, more quick, yes, in the front, Ash. Other Ash.
In recording for shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, were there ever instances where you actually had to record the dialogue alongside another?
No, so with shows like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! We record the voices one actor at a time, one character at a time. So even if I'm in the booth doing Pokemon, it was Brock, then back to the start, James, or I even played Butch, if you remember the other Team Rocket. So we didn't have a chance to play off of each other that way. And that's called ADR. That's what that is called, because we're replacing the dialogue. But then when I worked on shows like Viva Pinata, which I also directed that show, I recorded each actor individually, just the voices, and then assembled a voice track and sent that to the animators to draw to my timing, which was kind of cool. The only show we worked on that had multiple actors in the room at the same time is I worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the 4 turtles would record together. And then guest stars would pepper in the lines around them, but they worked together. The problem I have with that is there are 2 things. One, if you've got 4 actors, they have to be really good at responding to each other without stepping on each other. Has anybody heard of that expression, stepping on each other's lines? See, if you're recording people and you've got 4 microphones all on, and I say something and you step on the last bit of my word, I can't cut those apart if I want to open them up or fix your line. They're recorded on top of each other. So you have to be really tight, but not right on top. So sometimes that happens, which is, oh, we got to do that again because you stepped on his line, right? The other thing is this. I feel like a lot of times we accept a performance from 4 actors when 3 are great and 1 is okay because 3 are great and we got to move on. Where I can't finesse that 1 actor's performance and then cut it together with the rest. If you listen to Viva Pinata, you will never know that those actors were not in the booth together. The way that I had them respond to what I knew I was going to ask of the other actors. That was recorded 1 actor at a time, 3 in a row of each line. And then I built it that way. So there's pluses and minuses to both of that. I love doing radio commercials where it's 2 people talking. I've done that. That's all great, because you can really play off, give and take. But not with the cartoons. We didn't really do that. Good question. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Do you like voice acting as Brock more or James more?
I like them both for different reasons. Brock, to me, I like the fact that he flirts with every girl that he sees. That's very funny to me, and the way he does it. He's sort of oblivious to everything else. I like there'll be a battle going on, and everyone's paying attention to who's going to win, and of course his comment will be like, but she's cute, and it's like, that's just funny. I like that kind of stuff. But with Team Rocket reminds me of the great comedic villains of cartoons like Dick Dastardly and Muttley from Wacky Racers and things like that, where they're the comedy of the show. They're not in it the whole time, but when they are on screen, they make you laugh. and the bad disguises, the bad accents, all of the stuff that they're doing where no one goes, that's Team Rocket. You know what I mean? You know, James has got a bad mustache on. They're like, I don't know who this guy is. That was fun, because imagine playing a role where that character is also playing a role. So it's one on top of the other. So that was a lot of fun, where Brock really didn't have a chance to do that as much. So yes, but it's a toss-up. I like them both. Yes, in the corner.
Did it get boring playing singing routine every episode with the flirting with Brock and the same model with James?
No, never got boring. Actually, it was, because we didn't watch them ahead of time. So when we got to that point, we would laugh when something silly happened, especially like, some of the crazy antics Brock would go through or he'd sing a song or whatever it was. No, I never got bored with that stuff. I'm sorry, I'll get you in the front too, yeah.
You're a musician.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the instruments that you play and how it brought you to becoming a comic or voice?
Sure. So I've been a singer. So actually, I was a guitar player first, and in 8th grade, I was in a music class where it was kind of a very progressive school. I never had grades in my whole life.